Hey, this is Joel with American Giants. Just wanted to do a quick video here and announce another sale. Already, we just had one a few weeks ago and we got another one coming up, and I'm really excited about that. It's always good to see these guys find new homes, and especially like the last one that was just sold in Grove. Actually, they both went to really great owners. One went down to Dallas and the other one's going to be on Route 66 in Oklahoma City, or near Oklahoma City. So very exciting to see when these sell and where they go. Up for sale is not a Muffler Man exactly, but a Pioneer Man. So this is a really close relative, a close cousin to the Muffler Men. They were both made by the same company. And the Pioneer Man that's being sold is the one from Hillsborough, North Carolina, not far from Raleigh, that stood at the shops at Daniel Boone. So many of you are familiar with this guy, and all the years he was in Hillsborough, many of you have shopped there and remember him well. I want to talk just a little bit about the history of the Pioneer Men. They were made by International Fiberglass in the mid-60s, and they were made for a restaurant chain named the Wagon Ho restaurant. And this was a really cool place to eat because it looked like a covered wagon. The restaurant had a huge canopy that covered it to make it look like a covered wagon. And out front of the canopy was a large fiberglass figure that was a team master. He drove the imaginary oxen that were supposed to be out in front of the restaurant. They never made them. I don't know if there were ever plans to make oxen, but they did make the team master or the wagon driver. And we call them today Pioneer Men for some reason. Not exactly sure why we call them that. It might have been something that Deborah Jane Seltzer and I coined early on, or we might have heard it somewhere else. I really don't know. But the Pioneer Men were a result of this, and these guys were mostly deployed to Florida, Georgia, Alabama, the southern states. And they were on the roof of these restaurants. Now, the Wagon Ho chain didn't last too long. I think it disappeared by the end of the 60s. And, it was also a bit of a, being in Florida with hurricanes and high wind, it was a bit of a problem with those massive canopies, and the wind would get it and destroy the canopy, and it was a lot of cost to get things fixed. And so there was probably a number of reasons for the demise of the chain, but eventually they were all closed down, and those team masters all found new homes. People generally don't throw out stuff like this, and somebody has an idea or a new business or something, and the Pioneer Men all found new homes. Now, what's interesting is I have not seen any evidence that International Fiberglass made anything but a sitting version of the Pioneer Man that sat on the edge of that restaurant and drove the imaginary oxen. But we have both sitting and standing Pioneer Men today. And so that begs the question, why do we have standing Pioneer Men that did not fit the look of the Wagon Ho restaurants? Why are there standing versions? There is no evidence whatsoever that International Fiberglass made a standing version of the Pioneer Man. My hunch is that the standing version of Pioneer Men originated in North Carolina. North Carolina has always been kind of a hotbed of fiberglass entrepreneurs and talent and skill. You have the Yogi honey fried chicken coming out of there. There's a lot of fiberglass businesses that were running in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and still today. You have Graham from Grahamland near Bolton, North Carolina. He has received a lot of his molds handed down through these fiberglassers from North Carolina, and he's made a lot of new ones and is making all kinds of things there that people can see. And so my hunch is that somebody in North Carolina got a hold of a Wagon Ho man and made legs that would fit him and made a mold and started making standing versions that could be purchased by businesses in that region. If you notice, a lot of the standing versions that exist, they're all clustered in North Carolina, maybe a little bit in Tennessee. There was one at Pigeon Forge, but they're very, very, very distinct to that part of the country. These pioneer men, both sitting and standing, are scattered throughout the country. Of course, they're clustered in the South where they were used. There was one in Pigeon Forge that I remember visiting early on. It is gone now, and it has moved up near Wytheville to a campground, Wytheville, Virginia, and I just visited it a few months ago. There's one near the Outer Banks, Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Fascinating story. A guy named Damien found him, I think, under a building and an old business of some sort. They were used at amusement parks, and so he got him and brought him to his house and set him up in his backyard. I was able to visit him and see the giant a few years ago. You have the one that was in Moody, Alabama, and this one came from a restaurant, I think, in Birmingham, and then got moved to like this remote area in Moody. And I remember going and visiting him and checking him out, like way back in the day when I first started doing this. His owners actually contacted me one day and said, hey, we'd like to sell him. And this is long before we helped with sales. And so I just called Bruce Kennedy at Bell Plastics and he bought him. So that one that Bruce has came from Moody, Alabama. And then there's a cluster of them that actually made their way all the way to Canada. I think the restaurant chain tried to establish in Canada, and there's two in British Columbia. The one in Hillsborough, of course, stood at the shops by Daniel Boone, and this is a really quaint, like, unique shopping experience. I don't have all the history of where he was before that, but he was there for quite some time, probably maybe even as early as the late 90s. In 2006, it was reported that the area had been sold and he was going to be removed, and the shops were going to be removed for new development. Well, that never happened, or it got delayed, and you go all the way up till 2019 when I got there, and he was still standing, and I was able to visit him and take some pictures of him. And then in 2022, finally, that new development arrived, and he was taken down, and by the luck of the draw, I believe it might have been a gentleman who was involved with construction, but he literally was being taken down and nobody had vouched for him. We see this often. You have a community that really likes a giant, but when it's time for them to find a new home, nobody steps up. Nobody's aware. Nobody knows what's going on. And there may have been some efforts for the city of Hillsborough to get him, but whatever, nothing happened. And this guy, he basically, when he came down, he needed to go somewhere, and this guy raised his hand and said, I'll take him. And so he arranged transport, got him on a trailer, and he moved him a few hours away to his private residence, and that's where he stood ever since. It's now, and that was in 2022, it's now 2 years later, and it really kind of was a temporary thing. It was just, hey, I'm gonna get this giant and make sure it doesn't go in the dumpster. And now it's time to really find this guy a good home, and so that's where we come in. He contacted us, also with the help of Mike Curtis, thank you. And so we are going to list this for sale. And it's the same system as usual, basically on usagiants.com. We're going to run a running board. You can make your offers, and we will list them as you make them. It'll run for about 2 weeks, and then we will close it. And if you are interested in having a standing version Pioneer Man, this is your opportunity, because since the one in Moody, I have not seen one sell. So they do not come up very often for sale. So we're just looking for a good home. I'll put my email here. Reach out to me. You got any questions? You need more pictures? Any questions about transportation, setting up, anything like that? Be happy to talk to you. But we're definitely excited to see a Pioneer Man come up for sale and see where he ends up.